This is a freaking crazy Wimbledon. I mean, this has got to be the weirdest Wimbledon I can think of in the big three, big four. Let's throw Andy Murray in there. The big four GOAT era of tennis, basically the last 20 years, close to it. This has got to be the strangest Wimbledon for sure. I mean, first off, our number one and number two players in the world are gone from the tournament. And then to make that weirder, Medvedev is really number one because Djokovic got kicked out of Australia. I mean, Djokovic didn't even need to defend his title and win the Australian Open. If he could have just, made quarterfinals, that would have kept him ahead of Medvedev. And then you got the weird ranking system because of COVID, the lingering effect of that. Then speaking of lingering effect of COVID, we've got three of our best grass court specialists in the draw. Was Roberto Bautista Agut, he was in the top half, wasn't he? Or was he in the bottom? They're all in Rafa's section. Rafa's going for a Grand Slam. This has never happened. You got to realize the last time Rafa won the Australian Open, that was the year that Federer, right? 2009 Australian Open, yeah. 2009, Roger Federer wins the French. So Rafa's never even won the first two majors in the same calendar year before. So we're in that uncharted territory. And now lingering effects of COVID have taken out three of the best grass court specialists in the draw, all out of Rafa's half of the section, or at least in Berrettini and Cilic. Pretty amazing stuff. And then, of course, we have all this going on. I don't even want to talk about Alcaraz going down the center. I'm very happy for Sinner. I was leaning towards Alcaraz, but Sinner's he's a little bit older. He's about a couple years ahead of Alcaraz, even though they played each other in juniors and whatnot. But he's got a little more experience on grass than Alcaraz. Amazing to see how fast Alcaraz learned and figured out some grass court tennis this fortnight. But all I can think about is Nick Kyrgios. Pop this one up. This match. Speaking of crazy Wimbledons, then we get this. Got him. That's a wrap. He's excited. Everyone's excited. Nick Kyrgios, man. Yeah, hit the music. Usually the music is almost like a punchline, but today I'm just going to say hit the music. Let's roll right into this. Great article in the New York Times about Nick Kyrgios, and I don't usually do this. I'm going to pretty much read. There's a lot of think pieces, opinion pieces out there right now talking about Kyrgios and Tsitsipas, and it ranges all over the place, and this has got to be the best one at capturing what actually happened in that match to me. So I usually don't do this, but I'm going to read almost an entire article from start to finish. This is by Matthew Futterman. Put it on the Fudgerman. Put it on the screen. Nick Kyrgios, a dream, a nightmare and a nightmare for Wimbledon is winning. Nick Kyrgios, a dream and a nightmare for Wimbledon is winning. The Australians' matches and news conferences have become irresistible theater. Some call them a circus, a blessing and a curse for a sport that is always battling for attention. Yeah, I mean, that's true. And I've said it on the show numerous times here. We need Nick Kyrgios to get more attention, and I see people make good comments pointing out that maybe this isn't the kind of attention that tennis wants. I don't know, but I think there's really no way around it. We need it, and we're going to have to take it no matter what. But let's dive into this article because, for one, Tsitsipas probably had worse behavior in that match than Kyrgios, but you can't simply say, it's all his fault because Kyrgios really was provoking Tsitsipas the entire match. And then you'll see in this article, Kyrgios basically calls out Tsitsipas for being soft. He says, if you can't deal with me mentally, I think he's soft. And anyone else on tour can just go, well, he's wrong there. Who else can go out on tour and behave, do the Nick Kyrgios show? I can't think of anyone. It's funny, I was listening to the match and John McEnroe was commentating. And it's funny to me because in the past I've said, if you think about it, Nick Kyrgios is like Pete Sampras's serve mixed with John McEnroe's hands, the hand skills of Johnny Mac. And Johnny Mac was kind of saying that in the broadcast live about Nick and saying, that's what makes him so amazing. He didn't say like he's got hands like me, Johnny Mac. He wasn't saying that, but that was the point. He was saying the power, this guy has it all. The power he has combined with the touch is unbelievable to Johnny Mac, who has often been cited as having the greatest hands of all time. Yeah, Nick Kyrgios really does have it all. So not only is it hard for someone to go out there and replicate his game, I mean, it's kind of impossible. I was watching him, I was thinking like his game, it's like an algorithm. When you're scrolling through a Instagram or a Facebook or whatever, even freaking Google search now. Google search. Before I type it in, I'll see some stories and they target me. They know I like tennis stories. They know I can't resist. Next thing you know, I don't remember what I went to Google to search for anymore because you've probably done it. I'm sure someone out there has done this too. Next thing you know, I'm scrolling through that powerful algorithm that knows how to find random topics that are irresistible to me that I have to click on and read articles about, right? So when you watch Nick Kyrgios, he's kind of like that. Most tennis players compared to him are boring, right? Reading a book is boring compared to scrolling through a powerful computer algorithm that targets your interests and can put flashy things that you can't resist in front of your face, right? Anyway, I'm sure you've heard some kind of argument like that of saying why social media can be bad for people, something like that, right? Anyways, my point was watching Nick Kyrgios, I was thinking that watching that match against Tsitsipas, it's kind of like the algorithm, right? We're seeing all these different things that make us ooh and ah for the full range of powerful shots, crazy, insane behavior that just grabs our attention. We can't look away, kind of like the train wreck effect. The finesse, the tweeners, trick shots galore. I mean, that's what watching Kyrgios is like. He almost makes it. He's like a player for this generation, my generation, and the one after us. Well, the ADD, attention deficit disorder generation. Kyrgios is perfect for us. So obviously, we need a guy like him to grow this sport. But is it the wrong kind of attention? Anyways, let's get into this article because I think Kyrgios is mostly right. And this article does a good job of talking about how Kyrgios really was, being pretty horrible behavior throughout most of the match. Yet, in many ways, he's right. Let's go right into it. All white is the dress code at Wimbledon, begins Matthew Futterman at the New York Times. The oldest and most traditional of 4 Grand Slam tennis tournaments. So when Nick Kyrgios wears a black hat for his on-court interview, he is sending a message. I mean, to me, everything Kyrgios does is pretty calculated. He knows what he's doing out there. He's working the ref. He's the greatest at it on tour. Anyways, let's keep reading. But I just got to say that really quick. He knows what he's doing in many ways. That's what he did Saturday night on number 1 court after his emotional fireworks-filled 6-7, 6-4, 6-3, 7-6 win over Stefanos Tsitsipas of Greece, the number 4 seed. As Wimbledon heads into its second week, the women's tournament is wide open, and there's perfect summarization here, by the way, of the state of Wimbledon right now, this year's tournament. Wimbledon heads into the second week. Women's tournament wide open, a.k.a. boring. And there is potential for a men's final of Novak Djokovic and Rafa Nadal, which looks more inevitable each day. Exciting. And then there is Kyrgios, a dangerous and disruptive force who has so much pure talent, but is so temperamental and combustible and so drawn to and disgusted by his chosen profession that the sport can neither control him nor ignore him. Highly interesting. There's some interesting stuff going on in the women's draw, but I just, the big three have made tennis way more interesting when you don't have any certainty like the next-gen guys. They're so disappointing. Most people, almost anyone I talk to about tennis who follows the sport closely at all is kind of bored and over it with the next-gen because it's just the same thing, disappointment after disappointment. You have to have some key figures in the sport, and that's the problem in women's tennis. To kind of, it was exciting when Serena was playing in that first round, but she lost. And it was exciting seeing Swiatek, Iga putting together a win streak unlike any we've seen on the women's tour for a long time because of this problem they've had for so long. But she's out, she's gone. Obviously, it's tough for her to make the transition from clay to grass. Even though she was doing it fairly well at first, she ran into someone who could really play on grass, and that's all over. Hopefully it doesn't happen to Rafa tomorrow. Anyways, hopefully we get to keep him a little longer. He plays when he feels like it, then disappears, and for months, only to return to wreak havoc and provide headline-grabbing theater, continues the New York Times article on Kyrgios, which, he just took a few months off, and then he comes out here and takes control of the storyline of the sport. Amazing. Everywhere I go, I'm seeing full stadiums, mate. Everywhere. Like, everywhere I go, I see the full stadiums. The media love the write about I'm bad for the sport, but clearly I'm not, bro. That's what Kyrgios said after his win over Tsitsipas, which he's kind of got a point. Bad for the sport, but everywhere he goes, he's selling all of the tickets. Kyrgios is an immensely talented Australian who has an ambivalent relationship with the rigors and requirements of professional tennis. He relishes his role as the game's great outlaw, unafraid to jaw with, spit toward, or berate judges and umpires. Yeah. I mean, who would have thought that, one of the most famous, popular tennis players on tour regularly makes it a feature of his matches to spit towards people? Who would have thought that would fly in tennis? Amazing. He badgers young workers on the court for not keeping the change of the, continuing from the New York Times article here. He badgers these young workers. What are they talking about? Workers, I guess. What are they? Well, they're not ball kids. What are they? I don't know. He badgers these workers on court for not keeping the changeover chairs stocked with fresh towels and bananas. There'd be ball kids who do that, right? He smashes rackets. One ricocheted off the ground and very nearly crashed into the face of a ball boy at a tournament in California. His boorish display regularly garners tens of thousands of dollars in fines. Then he will return to the court and fire one of the most dangerous serves in the game. He puts on the sort of magical shot-making clinic, shots between the legs, curling forehands, underhanded aces that other players can only dream about. I mean, amazing how the camera totally... I had a friend of mine, my band played yesterday, no show yesterday, and the guitar player in my band is not a tennis fan. He kind of is annoyed that I will talk to him about tennis sometimes and, fill his head with a bunch of tennis. And that's usually a treatment I get before I started Coffee Break Tennis, an outlet for me to talk about my intense interest in tennis. But average person usually doesn't want to hear about tennis very long. Maybe we need Nick Kyrgios, because my friend was mildly interested to hear about this Nick Kyrgios guy. But anyways, my point was my friend happened to be standing there. We're getting gear loaded into the car. I'm watching the match. He's mostly doing the gear loading. But I was helping enough to get away with it. I'm watching the match on my phone, and then I keep rewinding and trying to show him the underhanded serve. The camera didn't cut in time, right? They're trying to show Tsitsipas getting ready to return. The next thing you know, on camera, you see Tsitsipas taking off, slipping in the grass because Kyrgios, I think this was to win a set. It was like a set point. I can't remember exactly when it was, but Kyrgios had hit an underhand serve. The camera didn't catch it, and I was trying to explain to my friend, and he couldn't understand. I kept trying to show him what happened and rewind it. And they did show Kyrgios doing the underhand serve, but he couldn't even, fathom in his brain that my buddy, that had been the serve, didn't even register it to him. Kyrgios kind of invented that. I know the underhand serve, Michael Chang did it at the French Open in the late 80s, sure, but Kyrgios is kind of the way he uses that underhand serve so frequently. That's really kind of a new thing, kind of his creation. Anyways, back to the article. He is a ticking time bomb, Nick Kyrgios, who packs stadiums and has hordes of young fans. He is at once the sport's worst nightmare and its meal ticket. Hard to watch, but also hard not to. When he loses, it's always someone else's fault. When he wins, it's because he has overcome all manners of forces against him, tournament directors, the news media, the tennis establishment, fans who have hurled racial slurs at him. Unscripted, take a look at this. This is how Wimbledon marketed Nick the other day, who they didn't want to put on center court until they absolutely had to. Unscripted, unfiltered, unmissable is how Wimbledon Twitter feed put it Saturday night as Kyrgios in all of his brilliance and brattiness overpowered and out-finessed Tsitsipas over 3 hours. All evening, Kyrgios went after the chair umpire as well as the tournament referees and supervisors for not defaulting Tsitsipas. And Kyrgios kind of had a point, although it was hilarious seeing Kyrgios demand that somebody get defaulted. After he angrily sent a ball into the crowd, Tsitsipas did, coming dangerously close to directly hitting a fan on the fly. Kyrgios claimed the umpire surely would have sent him off had he done the same thing. He may not be wrong on that one, in parentheses, says the writer here in the New York Times. Which, yeah, he's probably right. They probably would have defaulted him if he'd done the same exact thing. All right, now the article starts to dive into what really happened in that match, and this is good stuff, so pay attention here. The nearly endless complaints and interruptions rattled Tsitsipas. He struggled to maintain his composure, complaining to the chair umpire that only one person on the court was interested in playing tennis, while the other was turning the match into a circus. Then he took matters into his own hands and started trying to peg Kyrgios with his shots. The crowd of more than 10,000 people grew louder with each confrontation. It became more intense after Kyrgios finished off Tsitsipas in the tiebreaker with 3 unreturnable shots. A signature half volley into the open court. I remember just reading those words. I see it in my brain right away. Beautiful. A ripped backhand winner and a drop shot from the baseline we showed at the beginning of the show that died on the turf just beyond Tsitsipas's reach. The drama was cresting as the Tsitsipas and Kyrgios news conferences descended into a name-calling, insult-filled debate over decorum and who had more friends in the locker room. You've probably heard a little bit about this stuff. Tsitsipas, this article really does a good job of being fair, how it goes through all this. Although dealing with racism in the stands, that's something Kyrgios has been saying. I haven't seen any proof that anything actually happened. I think it's just one more thing. Kyrgios is always going to find a thing to complain about. Just like when he said, it slipped out of my hand when he threw the water bottle at the umpire's chair. Like, Kyrgios has no problem lying, almost like he believes the lie. Like, he creates like an alternate reality. We've seen it all the time. He's regularly now saying the fans are being loud when they should be quiet, although he is like the king of getting the fans to go insane to the point where it's distracting to the opponent. But if they spill into when he's trying to focus on his serve, he'll complain about it sometimes. And, I obviously don't want anyone to say something racist to Nick Kyrgios in the crowd, but I'm not convinced that it actually legitimately happened. If I see any evidence on that, I'll be the first to show you. But the only thing I could see that was actually, that he actually, like a real accusation, he said someone in the crowd called him a black sheep, which last time I checked was not a racist thing. Unless this guy was trying to be very clever and secretive about being racist towards Nick Kyrgios. Maybe it was just a poor choice of words. Or maybe, the guy's got a point. He's trying to say that Nick Kyrgios is kind of an embarrassment to his family or his country, I guess. I don't know where he was getting that from. Curious choice of words to me, but all out, like, straight up racism, I don't know. And again, it's kind of like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, that story. Kyrgios is kind of like that. Like, how serious do we take all these things that he claims? Anyways, other than that, though, just throwing that into the article without really digging into it or explaining anything behind it. Other than that, I think this article does a great job. And right now we're seeing a lot of, misleading things out there saying, basically trying to attack Nick and blame him and say it's, Tsitsipas is all in the clear here and he's the good guy, when really both of them were being, bad behavior from both of them, honestly. Anyways, Tsitsipas, certain that Kyrgios had intentionally made a mess of the match and probably steamed that Kyrgios had beaten him twice in a month's time, said his fellow players need to come together and set down rules that will rein in Kyrgios. Interesting. Tsitsipas thinks that, maybe Djokovic's player council can come into effect on that one. It's constant bullying, says Tsitsipas of Kyrgios. That's what he does. He bullies opponents. He was probably a bully at school himself. I don't like bullies. I don't like people that put other people down. He has some good traits in his character as well, but he has a very evil side to him, which if it's exposed, it can really do a lot of harm and bad to the people around him. I was surprised by this. Tsitsipas saying he's probably a bully at school himself. I don't know. Have you seen young Kyrgios pictures? I mean, there are chubby kids who bully other kids, I'm sure. But usually, I was a chubby middle schooler like Nick Kyrgios. I remember that was like, there was a lot of bullying done to me. So I don't know. I've heard Kyrgios say he was a victim of bullying. I wouldn't be surprised if that sounds more true to me than Kyrgios was the big bully in school. Anyways, though, but Tsitsipas doesn't know what he's talking about there. I think, Tsitsipas is trying to work the media here just the way, that Kyrgios knows what he's doing when he tries to work the ref or work the media. Kyrgios is the king of trolling the media, too. Anyway, Tsitsipas says he regretted swatting the ball into the crowd, but was less remorseful about another one he smacked across the net into the scoreboard, earning a point penalty. This is great. Listen to this. Tsitsipas says, I was aiming for the body of my opponent, but I missed by a lot. When I feel like other people disrespect me and don't respect what I'm doing from the other side of the court, it's absolutely normal from my side to act and do something about it. In tennis, you're allowed to try to hit the opponent when they come to net, wherever. So I'm not totally against that, but there is another way to look at this. You know, he's basically blaming. He says, when other people disrespect me, I'm allowed to do whatever I want, including violence. Now, because it's tennis and we can hit people with the ball, that is a thing. Violence sounds a little extreme, but you see the rationale here because of Nick. I don't think it flies, and I think a lot of people are not going to respect Tsitsipas for the way he tried to go about this in the press conference. You know, at least Kyrgios doesn't try to hide the ugly side so much and make excuses for it, whereas Tsitsipas kind of does there. Anyways, Kyrgios, watching all this on a television nearby, continuing with the New York Times article here, minutes later, he sat down behind the microphone wearing that black cap and a T-shirt with Dennis Rodman, the one-time NBA rebel. Once more, Tsitsipas had created a situation where Kyrgios could get the better of him, and he really did, even allowing him the rare chance to take the high road and claim to be a kind of innocent, which is amazing that Kyrgios pulled this off. And Tsitsipas, what an idiot. I mean, he really set him up for this one. Take a listen. Look, mate, he was the one hitting balls at me, starts off with Kyrgios talking about Tsitsipas. He was the one that hit a spectator. He was the one that smacked it out of the stadium. Then he called Tsitsipas soft for letting Kyrgios' conversations with tournament officials get to him. We're not cut from the same cloth, Kyrgios says about Tsitsipas. I go up against guys who are true competitors. If he's affected by that today, then that's what's holding him back, because someone can just do that and that's going to throw him off his game like that. I just think it's soft. I agree with Kyrgios there. I don't agree that someone else can just do that. Maybe Bublik. You know, I mean, there's a few guys who could pull it off, but who's going to go out there and, you know, do the full Kyrgios? I can't think anyone on tour who could actually pull it off. On Sunday, Wimbledon fined Tsitsipas $10,000 and Kyrgios $4,000 for their behavior. So, hey, at least Wimbledon got it right, because if anything, Tsitsipas was worse off. His behavior was worse than Kyrgios's. And he tried to use Kyrgios as an excuse, which to me makes it even worse, makes it kind of pathetic. I'm good in the locker room, Kyrgios said. I've got many friends, just to let you know. I'm actually one of the most liked. I'm set. He, as in Tsitsipas, he's not liked. And then, one last dagger from Nick Kyrgios stabbed into the heart. I'm adding the heart part. One last dagger, says the New York Times article, going right into Tsitsipas's heart. My editorializing here. He said that he did not take the court to make a friend. Fair. Are we out there to make friends in tennis? I don't think so. To compliment his opponents on their play, and that he had no idea what he had done to make Tsitsipas so upset that he barely shook his hand at the end of the match. Every time he has lost, Kyrgios said even when he was thrown out of matches, he looked his opponent in the eye and told him he was the better man. Tsitsipas, however, says Kyrgios, he wasn't man enough to do that today. Hit the music. We're going to get out of here. The victory puts Kyrgios in a round of 16, where he'll play the American Brandon Nakashima on center court on Monday, who has a better chance of beating him, I think, than the other guys in the draw, until we get to Nadal. But here's that part. 2 wins from a possible semi-final showdown with Rafa Nadal, assuming the 22-time Grand Slam champion can keep winning as well. It would be the ultimate hero-villain confrontation, a perfect setting for all manner of potential Kyrgios explosions and boorishness. Also, as the Twitter feed put it, unmissable theater. Nadal, known to be one of the game's true gentlemen, a keeper of the unspoken codes between players, he's marveled at Kyrgios' talent in the past and questioned the baggage he brings to the court and the ordeals he creates with umpires, especially when chances of his winning begin to slip away. Rafa can't understand that. Of course, Rafa would never want to blow a chance to win a match. Here's what Rafa said after asked about the circus match of Kyrgios and Tsitsipas. Well, I think everyone has to go to the bed with being calm with the things, las cosas that you have done. And if you can't sleep with the calm, being satisfied with yourself, it's because you do the things that probably are not ethical. How does Kyrgios sleep? Only he knows. Incredible piece. What was this guy's name? Matthew Futterman. Figures he's got the same name as me. Great article from Matthew Futterman. Really good stuff. There was some other pieces I was going to read to you, but they kind of suck. And I was going to use that as an example of media malpractice. Sucking. But this one was so good. That's really all we have time for. Tomorrow, Kyrgios, can he follow it up? Nakashima will have a shot. I'll give you one thing on that. It's because Nakashima's kind of like Jannik Sinner. kind of like Rafa Nadal, although Rafa Nadal does get rattled by Kyrgios. We saw that in Mexico. Will Rafa be rattled here? He wasn't last time they played at Wimbledon, not too long. Well, I guess it was 2019 when Rafa and Kyrgios last played at Wimbledon. And Kyrgios put on the Kyrgios show, and Rafa was able to stay focused and get the W. But Nakashima, man, this guy, very tough mentally. So he's not going to lose focus because Kyrgios is going crazy, and he's a very talented young American player. So we'll give him a shot. I think Kyrgios can get through him, and then Kyrgios after that, he's either going to get the Demon or Christian Green, who benefited from Berrettini getting the COVID. And then Rafa really handled Sonego, the Italian. And now he's got definitely a bigger challenge. You know, Botic, the Dutch guy, the big, tall Dutch guy with the big serve. We didn't really know anything about him until the U.S. Open last year. And since then, he's made a run at every single Grand Slam. So a lot of interest in that match. I think Rafa's going to get through it, but I think he's going to have to keep getting better like he did. He lifted the level to smack down Sonego the other day. We'll see what he can do tomorrow. We will absolutely be back tomorrow in person, no podcast, on the camera again. Maybe we'll bring Mr. Goat on camera too. We'll be back tomorrow, talk about Kyrgios and Nadal. Hopefully we'll be one step closer to what will be an unforgettable semifinal at Wimbledon. See ya!